any moment I have to speak to how proud I am, but I think how proud this community is of our students. I know our teachers are very proud of our students and their learning, and on behalf of the leaders in this district who every day in every building lead those schools, they're incredibly proud of the work that's being done, and it's good to be West Ada.
What a great conversation with Marcus. I mean, he really brings home his heart for teaching and really the heart for teaching and learning that goes on throughout our district.
There's so many moving parts, and but he does. He's passionate about it.
He's passionate and about every student, not some students here or there, but every student has the opportunity to learn and grow in our district. And I think you'll find that too in this conversation.
That's super cool. Yes. I am Ken Hyde, and this is
and
Katie
I'm Katie Rodenbaugh.
Thanks for being here. We love having you here. And to Katie's point, the conversation with Marcus is pretty cool. We discuss everything from the new calendar to professional learning days and late start Wednesdays and how that affects us as parents. And it's good to hear the reasons behind that. So,
and how we continuously grow and improve as a district, how we improve our system to ensure that it's a high value return on investment of parents' tax dollars, of parents' trust with their kids. I mean, it's just really a great insight into the inner workings of the district.
It's very fun. We are thankful that you're here for this conversation. Let's get to it. Okay, we are joined by our Chief Academic Officer, Marcus Meyers. And my hard-hitting question for you is, what in the world does a Chief Academic Officer do?
Well, all day, I pursue a relentless focus on teaching and learning and improving practices in West Ada. So really what I do is I get the opportunity to hang out with some tremendous educator professionals, both here at the district office, within our buildings and leaders, and within classrooms with our classroom teachers. And really that lens is a constant, relentless pursuit of improving teaching and learning in West Ada. And the opportunity to teach the adults within our system, knowing that the improvement of the adults within our system then leads to the improvement of our students and student achievement.
Well, and kind of broadening out, 30,000-foot view. I mean, this is not your first day. I mean, you've been with West Ada for a while. You're also a parent. Can you talk about your background in that regard as well for a minute? For
sure. This will be my 24th year in West Ada. Yeah. My background in education, in addition to me being a father of four and the husband of a school counselor here in West Ada, is that I started as a paraprofessional in an elementary school, teaching reading in dual language to students during breakfast.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
I had the opportunity through a grant program to work with students in a school called Agnes Risley Elementary in Sparks, Nevada. And as a result of that, I changed majors and changed my profession to elementary education. With that, I became a paraprofessional in their Title I program, which was some reading assistance and improvement that way, and had an opportunity to be a classroom assistant during that time. And then after moving here to Idaho and transferring to Boise State, I had the opportunity to work in the College of Education in the dean's office there and get to know some of those processes and systems and a lot of resources and supports that way. And then my first teaching job was in the Boise School District. I taught summer school programs there in reading and then experiential activities, so things like fishing and things like aeronautics and some different pieces I taught during the summer. And then taught reading intervention is what I was. I was a certified reading intervention teacher. And then my first job here at the then Meridian School District was at Ustick Elementary, teaching 5th grade. And so I had the opportunity to teach elementary school here in West Ada. I've had the opportunity to be an assistant principal and an intern at elementary schools here in West Ada. I was the principal at Meridian Elementary for quite a few years and loved every moment of that. Then moved here to the District Service Center as a region director at the time.
Yeah.
And then from that position, when really the region director position is really somewhat of an area superintendent where you provide supports and resources for buildings within that region. I was in the East region of the school district that way, and loved every moment of that and spending time in schools and the opportunity to get to know those families and teachers and principals. And then as of a few years ago, had the opportunity to be the chief academic officer when Superintendent Derek Bubb came on board, and here we are today.
That's awesome.
Not your first day.
Yeah, not your first day.
First day.
And that's something I love about West Data that seems to be a common theme, that we kind of grow our own up through kind of the ranks of leadership. We love when amazing classroom teachers want to stay in the classroom because that's where their heart and their passion is, and we want to keep them there.
Sure.
But if you kind of have a passion like you do for kind of higher level, helping with the policies and the process and the systems that really improve learning for our students, I think that's so cool to see your progression through the system. So thank you.
I enjoy systems thinking and process thinking and what it means to change a small process within a much larger system and watch the impact that that has on learning across the district. And I think that building leadership capacity is a passion of mine, and building leaders and supporting leaders and growing leaders within our organization, and then the opportunity to create those opportunities for those outside of our organization as well.
Well, so growing leaders. How do we do that? And I'd like to start maybe with Late Start Wednesdays. As we always say, we're parents.
Yeah, it's Late Start Wednesday.
Yeah,
that's all we think about.
Late Start Wednesday, you can sleep in. I'm talking to my kids or whatever. But why do we do PLCs? Why do we do Late Start? Why is that an important thing in terms of training up and talking amongst ourselves?
Yeah, bottom line is the importance of improving teaching and learning for our students and thereby impacting student achievement all has to do with opportunities that our teams have within buildings here at the District Service Center, and then also with our administrative teams around the opportunity to sit and plan and collaborate. So planning and collaboration are two separate things, where planning is around what are those daily activities, what are those weekly activities, how do we very intentionally structure a student's day around what they're going to learn. The collaborative side of that really addresses multiple questions for teachers. To simplify those questions, there's 4 of them, and it's really around what is it that we want our students to learn? What are those most important prioritized standards to say these are absolutely essential? The second question those collaborative teams are going to ask is, how do we know that they've learned it? And so they use assessment data for that, and not just the larger assessment data you would think of with IRI and iReady, but really what are those classroom assessments? What are they telling us commonly about our students that we are responsible for in teaching and learning each and every single day to ensure their achievement? And then lastly, what are we going to do as a result of that data if they have learned those prioritized standards or haven't learned that? And really that has to do with what are we doing to impact our instruction and change our instruction? What are we doing to provide additional reteaching opportunities or pre-teaching opportunities? And then what do we do to create interventions and enrichments? And that all happens within those school teams. That takes time. And because we're so dedicated to that, we're willing to start school later, knowing that, yes, that does have an impact on families. But the other side of that impact is the learning that your students are going to leave us with when they leave our system, knowing that every Wednesday our teachers stopped what they were doing to make sure they answered those 4 essential questions to definitely impact teaching learning.
Okay, that sounds like it would take a lot more time than 15 minutes on Wednesday mornings. And it's a huge job with a great return on our investment as educators and as parents, because the benefit is to our children. And so I think that would probably lead into our professional development days that we have throughout the year, right? And so do you want to expound on those and why we have them and what happens during those days? We have one coming up.
Absolutely. So that 15 minutes is the last 15 minutes of another 45 that exists before school starts that way. And so there is that time frame built into it. The additional time, the full school days on those professional learning days really do center, again, around those 4 essential questions, except that we design instruction for the adults in the system, so for teachers and for paraprofessionals, for our staff within the system, to make sure that we're focused on teaching processes toward district-wide goals. Okay, so for example, on this upcoming professional learning day on September 20th, our kindergarten through 5th grade teachers, as well as support staff and related support certified staff, that anybody who serves students within at those elementary levels is going to be attending early literacy training toward our new K-5 adopted ELA materials. And so really it's around our district goals, improved early literacy, because those foundations of early literacy and reading lead to all other academic subjects and the achievement within that. And so we want to make sure that in order to set that strong foundation, our teachers have the skills and understanding to be able to do that well. And so because it's a district-wide goal, those are district-wide learning intentions for us on September 20th.
It's pretty cool. Well, and goals, standards, setting academic standards, doing all those things. How do you go about how does the team go about doing that? And then how do you work with the faculty? We've kind of touched on this, but then how do you work with the faculty to implement those standards and goals?
Yeah, it's important that we talk with our teaching teams to be able to say, what are those prioritized standards? What are our kids coming to us knowing and not knowing as we move forward with that? And then what are we really going to focus on and prioritize? You think of the number of skills or standards that a student could learn and should learn. Some of those are absolutely essential, right? And some of those are supplemental standards and skills that we want them to know. And so there's the have to know and then the nice to know behind that, right? And so what we want to say is, what are those have to knows? What do they have to know to be successful in the grade level and then that next grade level within those content areas or within those grade level teams? And so we pull together teams of teachers. We pull together teams of principals. We seek their feedback. We create working groups and collaborative groups to identify what is it we want students to know. And then we clearly articulate what does it mean to understand that standard through something called proficiency scales, which are really a scale in terms of what does it mean to be proficient in this? What does it mean to working toward proficiency, and what does it mean to excel beyond proficiency? So we have that common language of what does it mean when a student does meet that standard.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Now, since we're talking about systems, you said you enjoy thinking about systems, improving systems. All of us parents realize that this summer was a little bit shorter than it has been in the past because we went back to school a couple weeks earlier than we had. Would you like to explain the calendar change and how that the why behind that?
Absolutely. So the biggest why behind the calendar change is that when we talk about what we want students to learn, the other question behind that is when do we want them to learn it? And are we dedicating enough time throughout the school day to ensure that they're in those instructional settings and that they do have that opportunity to learn within the day? When you think through the course of every minute in a school calendar, West Ada is going to make every minute count. Every possible moment count. When you think of the sequence and the scope of a student's semester of learning, an interruption of a major holiday break right at the end of that learning doesn't sometimes make a lot of sense, right? It would be nice to wrap up those learning intentions, those standards, and then come back from a winter holiday break with another start, right? And so the intent and the will of the board, as well as district recommendation in terms of that, was to end first semester before holiday break. Well, there's two pieces in order to make that happen, which is there are state required minimum minutes, which West Ada well exceeds. That's not the problem. And then there's also accreditation for students to say, I've earned a credit for this course in high school, and I've spent this much time in this class. Both of those have to line up, a state's minimum and then accreditation for the credit itself, right? And so in order to make that happen, you basically start with the required number of minimums, and you count back from the last day of school before the Friday before holiday break, and you count back, and that gives you the first day of school. Built into that, though, are the professional learning days. There's 2 in each semester, but we can count those as instructional minutes because they're professional learning and in-service portions of that. We can count a portion of that. So those days don't necessarily have an impact on the start day, those teacher training days. But you have to account for other holidays in there. It is definitely the will of our community and the will of the board to make sure that we have a week at Thanksgiving, and so you have to pull that back. Parent-teacher conferences are included within those dates and those timelines as well, but again, we can count some of that time in terms of state's minimum. So when you count all of those back, you wind up on our start date there on August 16th. And that's why it varies by year too, in that it could be the 14th or the 17th of that time frame because it's going to vary just based upon where the holidays fall within that calendar.
Well, that's super interesting.
Yeah. There's always ramifications you have to deal with, I'm sure. Yeah.
And I, as a parent who has family out of state, I really appreciate the week at Thanksgiving. So
there you go.
My kids will come back to school earlier in August.
The other benefit behind that type of a calendar is that in this upcoming school year, you get out of school before Memorial Day. And so it does allow families to start, even though this was one summer during the transition that seemed shorter, this upcoming summer in 2024 is going to feel like a typical summer in terms of we start on Memorial Day and we're coming back toward the middle of August, mostly when families are winding down from family vacations anyway.
That'll make my junior daughter much happier that next summer will be longer, so she'll be happy about that. Well, zooming out a little bit, I know that I love hearing about your background and how you've been in the classrooms, and you're an administrator. Zooming out, how do we engage students both in the classroom and outside the classroom? I know teachers are always thinking about that. How do we think about that as administrators at the higher level as well?
Absolutely. So engagement varies, right? And there's different types of engagement. You
Sure.
got academic engagement and their engagement within what they're learning at that time. You've got social engagement where they have a sense of belonging within the school environment, right?
Which is hugely important.
And both are very important, and both need to work hand in hand. And so as an administrator, what you're thinking through is, are my students arriving to school with a sense of belonging? Do they have an adult that they trust and know well? Do they know that the school cares about them and cares about their well-being? Do we have opportunities for them to become involved with clubs and activities? Do they feel like when they walk through the door, there's a sense of their belonging? Are the visual displays that we have and the way in which we arrange those settings is an inviting atmosphere to students, right?
Sure,
because we want them
sure.
to come to school and know that they're belonged, that they're cared for, that we appreciate they're there, and that we want them to come back, right? That this
100%,
school is a
sure.
place to be cared in. The other side of that is the engagement within what they're learning, right? And there is a sense of accomplishment and a sense of achievement that we want students to know. And some of that has to do with being like learning capable learners or assessment capable learners, meaning that I know what I'm learning at this moment in time. I know what I need to learn next. I know what it means to be successful, what is success criteria in order to get there. And then like, this is the evidence that says I'm doing exactly what I need to know. I think learning in and of itself has an intrinsic reward built into that, right? Like I'm learning to better myself as I move forward. And I think developmentally over the course of years that differs among students, right, at different grade levels. But I do think that when you think of a K-12 system and a student with us for those number of years, we start in kindergarten with this is what you're learning today and this is why it's important, and look at the achievement that you've made. Over the course of 12 years, now we have a senior that says, look at the work that you've done. These are the accomplishments that you've had. And if that message is true across a larger system, if that message reigns true in every setting that they're in and with every classroom, they've had 12 years of engagement and opportunity, and from not just the social side, but the academic side, to be able to say, you're going to leave our system now with a sense of accomplishment, a sense of belonging, knowing that West Ada was your home and that the next adventure that lies ahead of you, you're prepared and ready for. And there is engagement and incentive built into that intrinsically.
I love that. It's all part of our West Ada Ready promise, if you will.
I love doing those West Ada Ready stories. There's so many, because to your point, you get to into your senior year and like, no, you are ready. Let's go do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fly, little bird. So I was talking to some parents last night. So how would you advise some parents if maybe they have some teenagers who are struggling with that engagement? Some parents were kind of, asking me for advice at an event last night that, they have a child who she's not going to class. She goes off to school in the morning, but she's ditching class or whatever. And she thinks and she believes in her junior year that she's still going to graduate on time. But her parents know. They're trying to help her understand. Who would you have them reach out to? What would be the first step in helping that student realize what truly needs to be done on their academic plan to graduate on time?
Well, the good news is there's a number of people at the school to be able to help with that conversation, right? And so I think if students hear a similar voice of concern and a similar message from multiple adults that they encounter, and some of that's their family and their parents at home, and then some of that might be their school counselors or the assistant principal, or it might be the principal in the building or their classroom teachers, right? So they're going to hear that not just from their peers, but from the adults in the system. And so I would advise that parent then to reach out to the school counselors. Okay. They are professionals who know how to have conversations with students around, tell us what's going on and how can we help support you and what does that look like. Of course, those school counselors are always going to follow back up with that parent and let them know some of those decisions that were made, but we want to make sure that we're there, we're supporting students, and we want to be aware that that student's coming home and communicating that there are some struggles at school and what's taking place. But there's a tremendous amount of support staff there to make sure that not only they're there for students, but they're also there for families and parents, and we would love for them to be able to reach out.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that question because that really brings it home. We're talking about this one student. Zooming out again, there's so much data. I can't imagine how much data you have to analyze and figure out, okay, how do I analyze, and not to get too wonky, but how do I analyze all this data to help that junior or that third grader? How do you analyze it? How do you implement it and then bring it down to the real world level?
Well, there's a question we're going to continually ask ourselves in West Ada, which is, what is the evidence that convicts us, this system, this process that we have in place is improving teaching and learning for students, right? And so when we say, well, what are those expected outcomes? What are those anticipated outcomes? And then does this align with the evidence that we have? And so we look at evidence from multiple perspectives, right? We're looking at student achievement data that comes in from assessments within West Ada or district or statewide assessments. We're looking at classroom assessment data, but then we're also looking at like, what do we observe when we're out in buildings? What do we observe when we're in the classroom? What are those conversations we're having with teachers? Because we want to make sure that when we ask ourselves is like, what is the evidence that convicts us it works, that we're using multiple points of data. The other side of that is that just being very intentional on checking student understanding along the way, right? And so just waiting until May to have the end of year assessment or waiting until the end of semester for the final isn't the way West Ada works. We want to formatively check along the way and make sure that our students are learning and progressing with us. That allows us to intervene or enrich as soon as we possibly can.
You know what? That you perfectly segued right into our next segment, which would be like overcoming some academic challenges and how do we make all the pieces and parts fit, and upcoming technology like ChatGPT and things that are, going to pose challenges for us as leaders. So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and talk about all of that.
All right.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Go to YouTube, search West Ada School District, and like and subscribe today.
And we're back with Marcus Meyers, our Chief Academic Officer here at West Ada School District, talking about some academic challenges we face and how you kind of manage all the things that it takes to run a district this size. So, Marcus, why don't you talk to us a little bit about how, there's federal guidelines that go into how we run a school system. There's state mandates and legislative mandates and things like that. How do you manage it all, kind of keep track and make what feels like a pretty seamless system as a parent, in this huge district?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I get to work with really incredible people who are very knowledgeable about those.
Like me and Ken.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. Oh, yes.
We're
Each
good
and every day.
communicators.
I love patting myself on the back. It's a good thing.
About like those policies, procedures, and statutes that are required, right? And so I think part of that is that coordination of our effort to say, when we make a decision around implementing a process or a system or a curriculum or what that might look like in West Ada, are we following within the banks of the river with those policies and statutes, both federally, state, and locally, right? And so constantly asking ourselves that question before we move forward with that piece. I think the other, in terms of how do you roll that out in a very large system, it takes a team of some pretty incredible people to always first and foremost make sure that the decisions we make are best for students in terms of, is it improving teaching and learning and student achievement within West Ada? Like it always has to come through that lens. And then of course, do we balance it out with what's legally required? I do think that the coordination of efforts and the amount of time that we meet and coordinate and by multiple departments and say, is the decision this department making going to have an unanticipated impact or consequence or benefit on this other department here? And so we meet often throughout the course of the week to make sure that we're having those discussions, that we're coordinating and collaborating our efforts toward those common goals.
Well, and I hate to say it, but because everything doesn't come down to money. But in a lot of ways, whatever realm we're in, whether it's education, business, unfortunately, money's a thing. Budgetary concerns. How does that weigh in to the decisions that we make?
Absolutely, because the size of the pie is only so large.
Sure.
And when you start cutting into the amount of money that you have within the budget, you have to decide what you're going to prioritize and what gives and what takes, right? And so, again, we always place that priority around what is it we're going to purchase, and whether that's systems or the personnel behind the systems, the teachers within that, the classroom assistants, like what of that is going to have the greatest impact on teaching and learning. And I think that is some of where that evidence conversation comes on board, which is, what is the evidence that says the funding we spent on this is having the greatest return on our investment, right? And so we're constantly thinking through that. What do we have on that return on investment? Some of that too is using that funding to be innovative, right? And is this an innovative practice we can use and try? Maybe it costs a little more money on the front end. Like, what does that look like?
Sure.
But the overall benefit for teaching and learning could be so much greater down the road that we want to try it. And so you want to leave room within that budget for innovation. but you absolutely have to hold true to your beliefs in terms of improving teaching and learning and the outcomes for students always first and foremost. And then secondly, are we getting the return on investment we expect with dollars from our taxpayers and what state and federal dollars looks like, and are we using it as wisely as we can? I am of the belief that based off of that evidence, the outcomes that we have and the budget that West Ada has, that the value in West Ada is beyond at comparable, if not significantly better than many of our surrounding districts and especially those states around us as well. We're very proud of that, of the value of learning in West Ada.
That's cool.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I can say from a perspective, having being a newer employee to West Ada, but having worked in education a long time and being a parent of the district, I'm so impressed with our stewardship of finances because I'm a taxpayer and I'm a pretty conservative taxpayer.
Sure.
And I appreciate how much West Ada is able to do and how thoughtful we are with the dollars we spend because they're not ours. You know, they're taxpayer dollars that are entrusted to us to educate our children and educate them really, really well on a great budget. And so that just makes me really proud.
Absolutely. Me too.
Thank you for the efforts you put into that.
Yeah, it's very cool. Well, one of our themes this year, or I should say our theme this year is attitude over adversity. I love it. Because we all have stuff. We all have adversity we have to face. What's some adversity you face? And I guess specifically, we've all got hurdles. What are some of the non-educational hurdles that you have to navigate in your role?
Well, I think that that theme speaks to me just because of the amount of resiliency, right? And so we teach resiliency to students, and we would expect to model that on behalf of ourselves, right? So I think some of the challenges that I face and our team and my team faces is that it is a very large system, right?
58 schools, it's a lot.
That challenge in and of itself is but it isn't insurmountable when you think through the number of people involved in the efforts that we do each and every day. I am still the belief that the fact that we pull this off each and every single day is a miracle. Our students show up to the schools. They're safe. They're well taken care of. They're learning at high levels. They're fed throughout the course of the day. They get back onto a bus or they safely transport home. And this happens at a high reliability measure each and every single day. To me, that is the miracle of this system, and I love every moment of it, right?
Right.
And so I think the other challenge behind that is how do we constantly and continually improve in an ever-changing system, right? And so we're in the people business. Like for all the better things with that and for all the things that are sometimes challenges with that in terms of we're in the people business. Our product is improving the learning of people within a system. Whether you're 5 or 35 or 55, that is our goal and that is our job. And so the people business is tough because it's an ever-evolving system and we're not in charge of our raw goods, which means that we get what we get and we're going to do our absolutely best with any student that walks in the door, with any adult that walks in the door, and improving them because that is our job. And that is the equitable way of making sure that all students are learning at high levels and that we don't fall on the trap of like the excuse of what comes through our door is never going to be our excuse. Our rationale is going to be it doesn't matter what walks through the door. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that students learning at high levels, whether they're 6 or 60.
Yeah. We're not making widgets.
Nope, right. We are not. We are making people.
That's very cool.
Well, and when I have conversations like this with someone of your great experience and your heart for educating, I'm always humbled because I realize that my perspective is my perspective. I live in my little world. I was raised by my parents. I had privilege in my life. And so sometimes the perspective that, we had a conversation earlier off the podcast about, not everything is equitable in children's homes. Not all kids have the same start, but our goal in education is to try to level that as much as possible. And so I'm constantly reminded to have a perspective outside my own world. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for having the heart for all the kids and all the families, regardless of their situation or place in life, to learn and be improved so they have the best shot.
Absolutely. And that is about you get to do that, right?
Yeah.
And there's this opportunity we have about attitude over adversity in terms of like, it's not that I have to meet that challenge head on. I'm going to meet that. I get to do that. So
Yeah.
Way to model that. Good job.
Well, I and we talked about this earlier as well. I can't get my brain around. I'm reading articles all the time. Everyone is familiar now with ChatGPT. But I was reading an article last night about ChatGPT, but now how students are taking that software and then running it through some other software to make it look like it really is their work. Our world is changing, and that's always true, but our world is changing. How do we, as educators and teachers, navigate that and help our students work through that?
Absolutely. So I think some things to consider in terms of not just ChatGPT, but AI and technology and what's coming forward is one, it's going to ever evolve, right? So the idea of we won't let this through our classroom doors is probably not one based in reality. Like it's likely going to happen, and it's going to happen. And so then what we ask ourselves is what guidance can we create for our teachers? What guidance can we create for our leaders to say, here's how to navigate what is an ever-changing world and a challenging world, and the fact that students can access this tool, okay? ChatGPT, the agreements within ChatGPT don't allow for minors for that, right? So it's an 18 and plus application, but students are going to access it. So here's how we navigate that. One, we're really cautious with what we use that shows evidence of student learning or practice of student learning. And what I mean by that is students will practice their learning through homework assignments. They'll practice it with, short assignments within the class. They'll practice it with small incremental activities that lead up to what is an evidence, what is a project, what is a larger assignment, right? Sometimes this looks like a test, but not always the case, right? Sometimes it's that final essay that's submitted at the end of the time frame. So let's talk ChatGPT. If I'm a teacher and I send home that final evidence assessment piece home to get done at home and bring back the next day, that might not be the best guidance because there is an opportunity to run that through AI and then it come back.
Sure.
If though I structure my learning to where then evidence is collected in class, right? It's these in-class assignments. I know that on a district laptop, students can't access ChatGPT. I know that ability to not just control that evidence piece, but to really get a good grasp on what students are learning and why, right? And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that our assessment, the way in which we assess student learning, the way in which we teach always separates this evidence of student learning toward a standard from the behavior that exists with that, right? And so is there behavior that involves student learning? You bet, but let's talk this through. So we have the evidence of can a student write a 5-paragraph essay toward a thesis statement, okay? With all of the grammatical pieces, the structural pieces, the contextual pieces, with everything you would think would be built into that.
Sure.
Something that you could ask ChatGPT to do for you.
100%,
Can I structure an assignment or an assessment that tells me a student knows how to do that in class? Okay. Is there an opportunity to pull in AI as a tool? Now, again, they can't access that on a district laptop.
Right.
But let's just talk through the AI as a tool itself. How can that be used to generate ideas, generate thoughts? What could that look like in terms of capturing that tool and using that tool and teaching our students to be good stewards of technology? Like, what does that look like? Because at the end of the day, we're going to need to know you understand how to do this standard.
Right. Well, and you just led right into a question that I've had a lot of parents ask me about, and my husband and I have discussed this as well. Along the lines of evidence-based learning, you talk about practices of student learning and proving learning, if you will. And so could you explain for a lot of our parents who may not understand homework policy and late work policy and test makeups and that kind of thing? Because I think that really blends with what you were just talking about.
Absolutely. So we do have some guidance documents for teacher teams and for principals in terms of like collective agreements and West data and guidelines and policies around things like homework and grading policies for that. We continually revise those and update those based on the needs of our students and feedback from teaching teams, okay? And so we do have committees involved in that. The way it stands now in that is that if, in terms of late work policies, we ask that those collaborative teacher teams within those content areas and departments communicate that together, that they have that same expectation. That way one teacher in an ELA classroom across the hallway from another teacher at the same school, those need to be the same consistent policies across the board, okay? So that is in terms of like, what does it look like when students turn in something late? What could that look like? The other side of that is like the idea, like what is evidence and what is practice? That's common across the board too. What we want to be careful of, though, is that we distinguish If it's evidence of student learning, have we separated that from student behavior? And sometimes late work is student behavior, and that behavior is conditional on the environment that student goes home to if you send home that assignment. So for example, if you were to grade homework as evidence of student learning, the caution behind that is sometimes that student is intrinsically rewarded to go home and get that homework done. Not very often, but sometimes they are, right? Like they go home and I'm going to get this homework done because I don't want this to be late.
Sure.
I would argue that most of the time, that's actually a learned behavior that their parents and guardians are teaching them when they get home. What does that look like? Get your homework done. And so you can see that by grading that behavior of lateness or not, of being on time, what you're actually grading is the level of support a student receives at home versus the grading of learning that they receive in the classroom. And so that's the caution and the balance behind, can you grade practice? You sure can, absolutely. But you want to make sure that it's weighted against evidence to say, this is one piece of evidence around student learning, and this is a greater piece of evidence around, this is the piece that they constructed in class that I know that's their learning. It's not dependent upon outside home environments or environments outside of the classroom, that this was something that was created in class and a true evidence piece around student learning. So I hope that helps answer your question.
Absolutely does.
In terms of late work policies. But what we want to make sure of is that, one, we give students every opportunity to do their absolute best.
Right.
And that we level that playing field for all students across West Ada, knowing that that level of support is going to vary the moment they walk out of our classroom doors.
Because the goal is knowing and understanding, not check marking that you turned in an assignment. So that helped me, thank you, that helps me conceptualize it better, because I was kind of like, my husband and I are really hard on our kids. Like, no, in our home, it's unacceptable to turn stuff in. Like, you do that, but that's us.
That's you.
And
environment matters.
Yeah. And not all kids have that.
Well, and I love having this conversation because, listen, I'm old school, but I'm old school because my parents expected things. So I was a product of a good environment, and so I expect that of my kids. And so anyway, but understanding that and how that works with deadlines and how that helps us navigate all this it's a good conversation to have.
And the caution behind a student's grade being dependent upon having that structure and support at home, because that grade really should be a reflection of what they've learned and understood.
Right.
And so being very cautious about balancing that out is important. It's important to West Ada. It's important to our teacher teams. The world teaches people about what it means to be late and late work. The world is going to teach that. That's how that works. There are consequences for being late and turning things in the world.
Right.
In the classroom setting, what that looks like is, I understand what I've learned and here's what I can show you, versus balancing out how far I've learned that behavior.
Super cool. Well, let's take a quick break. Sure. And when we come back, we're going to really, we've already talked about this, but we're going to dig more into how parents can help our students really navigate the academics of West Ada. So we'll dig into that when we get back.
Okay.
Follow West Ada School District across your preferred social media channels: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Nextdoor, and YouTube. You can find us there today.
All right. So before we left, we were talking about the importance of students being able to demonstrate what they know and are able to do, and that's our goal. And so how important is attendance in that? I know a lot of parents think, we'll just go on this vacation here, we'll do that here, and they are your kids, and you have the right to do what you do with your kids, but every day is so important. Mm-hmm. You spoke about, in West Ada, we make every minute count of instructional time. And so why don't you elaborate for our parents why attendance and being there is so important?
Absolutely. And we are very intentional in West Ada about exactly what you just said, which is we're going to make every possible moment count. When you think through the school year calendar, there really aren't that many moments. Over a 9-month calendar that's interrupted by a number of breaks, structures and transitions within the school day, opportunities for professional development and in-service, when you really break that down to the number of minutes, there's 86 minutes in a high school period. We're going to take every advantage of that. And then the other thought behind that is that, let's just use high school as an example of that. Those are AB schedules, which means that it's 86 minute one day, but that doesn't happen again for 2 more days. Right. And so it's important that we use every possible moment of every single day to ensure those high levels of learning. So what I want to assure parents is that, one, kids get sick, things happen,
right.
And we understand that, and we're going to work with families and we're going to adjust that. What we would appreciate tremendously is the shared value around school attendance, students being with us at school. We promise to use every moment of that wisely if we can partner with our parents and promise that we get our students to school. And rest assured that if they're gone, they're going to miss something great.
Right.
And by missing something great, it's less about like this exciting activity or, that piece. It's more around like the opportunity to learn what we've already deemed are those essential standards within the classroom. You can't miss out on those essential standards. It's going to become progressively more difficult with that. And so get us in class with us. We'll make sure that we're always looking at our bell schedule and our calendar to try to accommodate for family vacations and schedules. But if you're here with us, we'll ensure that your students are successful.
Well, and for some kids, coming to school is either a safe haven or a social outlet or something they're really interested in.
A place of belonging, all those
like you
things.
spoke earlier. Yeah. And like I never wanted to miss school because I didn't want to miss out. Sure, the academics were great. That wasn't really an issue, but I didn't want to miss out on, seeing my friends or doing the fun activities or a pep rally or, that kind of thing. So those components of education are really fun too and help get the kids to be there. I have a son who's in CTE and he loves his diesel mechanics class. Like there's no way he could be fevering and burning up and he'd want to be there.
Absolutely.
So, can you expound more on West Ada opportunities that our kids have? I mean, we have so much from gifted and talented programs and career technical education and
Well, first I want to just allude a little bit on what you just said, which is rest assured that if your student isn't in class, we know and we miss them. So in a class of 32 students, we miss that one who isn't there. So please know that it's not just another student walking in the door, that we do miss that face. We miss that person, and we want them to be there with us. The second piece is we want them to be with us because of those opportunities. And you're absolutely right. West Ada abounds with opportunities. CTE, which is career technical education, is one of those opportunities for students. And it is really those areas of learning and applicability in terms of like technical education where I can walk away with the skills and certifications to do a variety of technical jobs right out into the community right at the beginning. And I think that everything from welding to construction to engineering to nursing to health services to just this variety of opportunity that students are presented with in West Ada each and every single day. Please take us up on that. Come and visit, look at the center. You will be impressed at the machines and the technology and the what is happening out in the world in terms of those technical professions is taking place right here within our classrooms in West Ada. I'm impressed every moment I walk through that, and whether it's the culinary kitchen here at Renaissance or whether or not it's the small machine shop at Meridian High, it is incredible. It is impressive. And you want to talk about students having something when they walk away, whether they choose to go to a college setting or not, or whether or not they choose to enter that technical field, or whether they choose to further their skills at a technical school here within the Valley or outside the Valley. We want them involved in that. And if they have that in their back pocket when they walk out the door, they're just going to be that much more successful in our community. So,
well, and I think kind of backing up a little bit too, because I think about the high schoolers and CTE, but when my kids were first back in the day in elementary school and starting to explore, hey, is GT gifted and talented the right place to be? Kids were at CN Elementary. I love CN Elementary. A lot of cool people over there, but there are people in place to help us as parents navigate. Is this the right way to do that? What are some of the systems in West Ada that allow parents to make good choices?
Yeah, so I think you hit upon one right there, which is GT, gifted and talented. I think that speaks to a larger support, which is like, what are those advanced opportunities for students who are achieving differently or greater than their same age peers? We want to make sure that we provide enrichment opportunities. Those are called enrichment opportunities within a classroom setting, within a system. So what can we do to further that? I think another more additional opportunities is our arts programs, both music and visual arts. Those are incredible opportunities across West Ada, and whether it's choir or orchestra or band, or whether it's painting and drawing, or whether or not it's ceramics, that those opportunities that take place are ways not only to engage students and what we talked about like having a place to go and a reason to go to school, but an opportunity to really walk away with like this skill outside of West Ada that parents can be involved in right from the beginning. I think in addition to that, there are opportunities at individual schools, right, to become involved. And I think I think parents sometimes go straight to volunteer opportunities with that, but there are also opportunities within the school just to get to know those opportunities and what is taking place and what can my child do. And whether that's at a School of the Arts school here in West Ada or a STEM school in an elementary school setting, but there are great opportunities at every school, regardless of the opportunities and choices that are there for parents really to become involved and engage in conversations with the principal and teachers there to say, what does this school have to offer within West Ada, and what can I do to involve myself and my child in it?
Yeah, I love that. I love that we have the, sorry, I feel
No,
like
you're
I'm
fine.
stopping you,
No,
but,
you're fine.
We have a focus on college and career
Yeah.
ready. And, along with all
100%.
of these opportunities that we've just discussed, where there's also still fast forward funding, right? Is that,
Absolutely.
And so that can, some of our students who are maybe not as interested in some of these CTE programs, or maybe they are, but there's other opportunities within that. And I think a lot of parents don't know or don't take advantage.
Absolutely. So fast forward funding pays for a variety of additional opportunities, including concurrent credit. We have advanced placement opportunities within the district. We have IB programs, International Baccalaureate programs here at Renaissance High School. We have associate degrees. A student can earn their associate degree at any one of our high schools in partnership with our local universities and colleges. They can walk away with that at post-graduation. And so I think you're absolutely right. When we talk college and career ready, we absolutely mean it. And our systems in West Ada support both of those avenues, either separately or together,
Yeah.
meaning that if you choose just the college path, choose just the college path or just the career path. But there is opportunity to do both.
Well,
You can head off to college already in a career path and be ready to go and have quite a few years of college under your belt and a career ready to go as well. So.
And I think that 87% of our students who do take a CTE course, at least one in their career, I think that shows that it's not just these kids and those kids. It's all our kids kind of getting that experience. And what a gift. I mean, if my husband and I would have had this opportunity in high school, we wouldn't be so have student loans and so many different career paths and multiple degrees and all the things that took us to figure it out. Our kids are getting to figure it out with really low consequences and a great price.
Absolutely. You could be a diesel mechanic right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know, I could have been.
You'd be awesome.
And then I wouldn't have
could
to
have
be
been.
here interviewing cool
You would
people
have been
like
great.
you.
Well, I just have to tell a quick story. When I hear you talk about the arts, it's so cool. My son, one of his favorite classes in high school was the art class taught by Coach Benedict over at Mountain View. But he started getting into painting shoes, and I'm like, holy cow, how does this deal with education? And this is what my son did. But it's just so cool that there's so many different avenues. I know there's no question there, but it's just cool to see the different avenues that we're talking about here.
Well, it really does tie together your previous questions around like how do students become engaged? What is the draw to coming to school and decrease in attendance issues? Like what does that look like? And it's about opportunities, and it's about them showing up and like your son painting a shoe. Yeah, he's not going to miss that day. It's a great opportunity, and he gets to connect with the adults and students within that setting, and all of those opportunities are in every school within West Ada, and we just love to have our students and families join us in it.
It's pretty cool. Well, hey, I'm a sports guy. What's the scoreboard? How do we know that we're doing well in education here?
Absolutely. So again, I'm going to go back to that. Like, what is the evidence that convicts us we're doing well within West Ada? Okay, and some of that is student achievement and what typically we refer to as test scores. That's one evidence component behind that. Our early literacy student achievement as compared to neighboring districts, neighboring states, and the state around us in whole, West Ada is at the top. That's what we do. Our students leave with a strong foundation in reading and early literacy skills that we know are going to have a direct impact on all of the other learning that they'll do here with us in that system. The second piece of that is what would typically be summative district and statewide assessments, things like ISAT. We're above the state average on that. Okay, we are proud of our students' achievement each year is in those growth trends in math and ELA, and in science as well. And I think that when you look at that is true, and also indicative of other assessments like SAT and ACT. It is true in AP scores and what that looks like with AP exams. I mean, our students excel in West Ada. We have the evidence and the data behind that. But again, you'll go and you'll walk in any building here in West Ada and you'll just see the incredible, like what is taking place within the building that leads to that data both of those align with each other, and it just shows that each and every day West Ada does a tremendous job, and it has everything to do with our teachers, students, staff, and leaders in each of the buildings, and our partnerships with parents in the community.
That's cool stuff.
I think that's probably a great place to just wrap up here.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and I mean,
Appreciate
are any final thoughts? I mean, we've had you under the gun for a while here, but anything we haven't talked about that, like, oh no, we need to talk about this before we leave? Anything?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I think any moment I have to speak to how proud I am, but I think how proud this community is of our students. I know our teachers are very proud of our students and their learning, and on behalf of the leaders in this district who every day in every building lead those schools, they're incredibly proud of the work that's being done, and it's good to be West Ada.
It is.
It is awesome. Well, thanks
All right.
for your time. Good to have you
Thank
here,
you.
sir. Yeah. Well, just cannot thank you enough for being here, and to thank Marcus. What a cool conversation.
Yeah, it's really cool, and it's cool to hear his trajectory through the education system. You know, starting as a para, helping students in an elementary school, and now he's helping make decisions that really positively impact all of us.
It's a pretty great thing to see.
Yeah.
And anyway, thank you for being here as well. As always, please subscribe. But we're kind of getting used to this thing now. This is our 5th or 6th episode, and it's just nice. So subscribe. Go and leave us a review on iTunes if you listen there. We would love to do that. Please jump on, as I like to lovingly call it, the YouTube. Go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our West Ada channel there. If you want to learn more about the podcast, westada.org/podcast is where you'll find all the old episodes. There's some great gems back there. I always tout the episode with Officer Garza, but gosh, just great stuff there. So you can go there to find old stuff. And again, we want to hear from you. So email us. What do you want to hear about? What do you want to learn about? The email address is communicate@westada.org. We would love to hear from you and know what episodes you'd like to hear coming up.
Yeah, and so today we heard from Marcus Meyers, who's our Chief Academic Officer here at the district. But on our next episode, we get to talk to Superintendent of Public Instruction, Debbie Critchfield. So she is the superintendent over all of education in the entire state of Idaho. And she's really a great leader and has had quite a successful first, 7 to 9 months in office
9 months,
there,
yeah.
9 months in
Yeah,
office. And
yeah.
so that's going to be a great conversation with her. So hopefully you'll tune in and hear more about that kind of legislative and the civic responsibility and that whole process. And
The budget stuff and
Yeah.
her parents' Bill of Rights. I mean, there's just so
there's
much.
a lot to talk about. So we hope that you'll come back and listen to this podcast and learn something new every week. And like Ken said, email us. Let us know if there's some topics you want to cover. But for now, this is the West Ada podcast. I'm Katie.
Have a great day. Thanks for being here, y'all.